There's marker A and marker B. That's 1/3, and the back is 2/3. I'm going to knit to A and stop. So I've knit to A, there's my yarn. I've taken the markers off because my needle intersections will serve as to hold those positions of the markers. This is how I would do it with 2 circulars. With 1 long circ, you simply have a cable section, a loop out at the intersection, and the other loop and ends would be out here. Front, A, B, back, where the heel will grow. And here we are with DPNs. Front, back. You can see that the back is 2/3 and the front is 1/3. That's how we set up sweet tomato heel socks. Need to begin the first short row. This is A and B. Here is the front. I have the back 2/3 scrunched up on the back needle. It fits just fine. And we're going to begin by slipping the first stitch purlwise. Just go in like that, take it off. Now you want it to be tight, but it's not possible to tighten it all by itself. It needs a friend to help it stay tight. So purl the second stitch, tighten it up, and then that one could use a friend too. So as you do this third one, tighten that, and that will hold your slip stitch and those two. Now simply purl all the way to the end of this needle, which ends at B. The end of the needle, we've slipped the first one, tightened those up, purled all the way to B at the end. B is at the intersection. So we now turn, and we're going to do the same thing going back, except this time we're going to stop short, and of course we're knitting. So slip that first stitch, and we want to tighten it up, but as you know, we can't get it tight by itself, so we take the second stitch, knit it, tighten it up, and as we do the third one, tighten them both. Hold them tight and don't worry about the rest. Now I'm going to knit until there are 2 left on this knit. We're always going to stop 2 shorter than before. Okay, now what do? Turn. How do we begin the next short row? Slip the first stitch. What do we do next? We make sure that the second one, as we purl it, gets tight, and that the third one also is pulled tight to hold its friends snug. And now we keep purling until there are 2 left on this end of the needle. So I've stopped 2 short at each of the last 2 rows. On this next row, which is a knit, I'm going to start as usual, slip the first one, tighten up the second one, tighten up the third one, and then proceed. I'm going to stop when there are 4 left. Gap right there, I stopped 2 short last time, and where I turned, it made a gap, and now there are 2 more here, and I'm going to turn, and that's going to make a gap, isn't it? So I've stopped when there are 4 left, and I just want you to read your knitting. A pair, a gap, a pair, about to create a gap as I turn around. Because look, watch the gap being made. As I slip that first purl stitch, purlwise, notice the gap. Okay, here we go. There are 4 left on this end. The 2, remember I stopped 2 short last time I purled. There's the gap, there's a pair, and here's the next gap that's going to be made. So you're going to be creating pair, gap, pair, gap, pair, gap. And if you ever get lost, just count off a pair, a pair. Make sure there's a gap there, and you always turn 2 before the last gap you made. See, we're making the gap here 2 before this one. Watch me make it. Always, by the way, when you slip purlwise, notice I moved the yarn to the back. That's because I'm knitting. If I didn't move the yarn to the back, it would cross over the front, and it would look funny. Keep the yarn where it belongs as you slip purlwise. Notice, pair, gap, pair, gap, pair. So we better knit that one because we want it to be 2, gap, 2, gap, 2. Don't want to stop 3 before the gap. We want to stop 2 before the gap. Notice you can also, when you wonder where you are, you can always just count off pairs. Pair, pair, pair. And you can see there's no gap there yet, but now there will be. So you proceed this way until you have about an inch left in the middle between all these nice gaps you're making. Pair, 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 pair. Over here, pair, 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 pair. Same number of pairs on both sides, but this is a bit more than an inch. Also, this is for a 4-year-old boy, my grandson, and for a child you can go less than an inch. So let me continue. Here we are. We now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pairs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pairs. And in the middle, a little less than an inch. I think that will work for my grandson. So watch what we do now. We slip the first stitch just like we were going to do another short row, and we tighten up just like we were going to do another short row, but we aren't going to. We're going to knit up to, see there's the first gap there? Normally we would turn here, wouldn't we? But instead of turning here, we're going to knit one more so that there's one before the gap. And now watch this. This astonished me when I noticed it worked. Okay. Let me lift this off just so you can look at it. See what we've got here? I'm holding the youngest generation of stitches. The youngest generation is the daughter. Here's the mother. Here's the grandmother, but we don't need to think about the grandmother. What we want to do, the mother says, let me ride, this is a horse, let me ride that horse with you and let me sit in front. Just lift her up like that. Do that again for you. All you do is lift her up, put her on the horse, and then knit them together like that. I'm coming through just like I would for a knit two together. Here we are. Notice it's all closed up. Now knit one. By the way, we call this thanks Ma. Lift up Ma, put her on board, knit them together through the back, knit one. Why does this work, you might wonder? Well, I'll tell you why. Here's Mom. Mom's arm is going across the gap right there. When you lift her up, her leg that bridges the gap gets shortened and closes the gap. It is that simple. Do not overcomplicate it. Lift Ma up on the horse. Thanks, Ma. Knit one. Notice that we're always thanking Ma right before the gap because she's in charge of closing the gap. So she always precedes the gap going down this way. And then you knit one because remember there was pairs of stitches, so that one gets knit, and there's a thanks Ma. How do you know it's a thanks Ma? There's the gap. Ma is looking down on the gap that she's trying to close. There she goes. Then a knit one. And the last one, by the way, this would be A here. Lift up Ma, knit them together. Looks like that. Pretty nice, huh? Now, you're not going to turn around and go back. You're going to rotate and look at the beautiful front, and you're going to knit across the front. You haven't looked at it for a while. You've knit one wedge. Now we knit across the front. You simply work your way across the front. We're actually doing a thing in the round again. Not doing short rows at the moment. What we're doing is we are closing the gaps. We're smoothing things out and integrating this wedge with the rest. Now, this is the daughter. Down here is her mother. The mother may be rotated, kind of hiding in the back, but the same thing. Here's the gap, and here's Ma looking down on the gap, and she says, close that thing. Lift her up on the horse, knit them together. Same move as you made before. Then you knit one. You always knit one after the thanks Ma. Lift up her leg, put her on board, knit them together. It's not a decrease, by the way, knit one. It's not a decrease because she is simply the previous generation and she's just joining her daughter in order to close the gap. Notice how there's a gap and Ma's looking down on it. Notice on the other side Ma looked down also, but Ma was looking down that way when we were going down the first side. Coming up the hill, she's looking down this way. Lift Ma up, knit them together. Voila. There's the gap, there's Ma's leg. Lift Ma up, the leg shortens. Knit them together, knit one. You keep going until there are no more gaps. This might be our last gap. Let me show you. It is. You know how you can tell? So you're at the same level as the next stitch. And there just aren't any gaps. Now guess what? You get to play, you could say. I'm going to knit all the way down to A. That was B, this is A, because, look, A, B at the beginning of the end of the front. You knit all the way down to A. When you get down to A, and you just knit, no fancy business at all. When you get down to A, you have completed the first full thanks ma closure round. And you have a beautiful wedge, one wedge. You're going to have 3. I've knit all the way around to A again. There's A. As you know, A is at the beginning of the front and B is at the back. And so here we are. Yarn is at A, just like it was when we began the first wedge, by the way, if you want to admire how nice it looks. We're now going to do another wedge, exactly like the first one, precisely like the first one, nothing new to learn. When that one's done, we will do a third wedge, and then we'll be ready to start the leg. Notice we just did a full round, so at the end of the third wedge, we'll do full rounds right on up the leg. Second wedge. Notice I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pairs separated by gaps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In the middle, I have a short little flat area. So what I'm going to do, show you one more time, slip the first one, tighten up the next 2. It's just like what we did before. And you might remember, we don't knit to 2 before the gap, but 1 before the gap, because we're going to thank Ma. Thanks, Ma, for closing the gap. I've completed the third wedge. Here it is. Notice that this is kind of smooth, isn't it? This is a short row heel, technically, because I made it with short rows, but it's very different than your standard short row heel because it's made of 3 wedges, which have gentle slopes, not 45-degree angles. I don't know what it is, but maybe 30. And there are 3 of them. If you have a rather large heel, you can have 4 of them. If you have a really little heel, you could have 2.5. Also, it's different because each wedge is integrated with several full rounds after it's completed, so that everything is very smooth and lovely. The book is full of lots of things on how to fit individual feet. I won't go into them here. I just want to be sure you see how it works and how smooth the result is. And this little sock, by the way, is going to be the exclusive sock. It's a prototype. It's not done yet. I'm just working out the stitch design. There will be probably a bunch of this on it, but this is for my grandson, so I can put just a little bit and play with the design. And you'll find that in my ebook, Cat's Sweet Tomato Heel Socks. That particular pattern will be exclusive to the ebook. It'll never be released as a single. So, I hope you'll give this a try, and I hope you'll find that this might be your new short row heel that is smooth like a tomato. Smooth like a tomato, look at that, and fits like not like a tomato, but like something else that fits you really well, like a sock.